My dad revealed my darkest secret to make everyone laugh. I revealed his to make everyone leave. My dad, Ronnie, thought he was the funniest man alive. He'd done stand-up at open mics for almost 30 years, never getting past a 7-minute slot at bars where the crowd came for cheap wings. But he called himself a professional comedian, and his whole personality was being the guy who made the room laugh, and it did not matter who he had to burn to do it. Most of the time, that person was me. Everything I ever did wrong turned into material. When I threw up on stage during the 3rd grade play, he told that story at every family gathering for a decade, with the sound effect, pointing at me like I was the punchline in the flesh. If I got hurt or cried, it was a bit. He carried a spiral notebook in his back pocket, and every time something happened to me, he'd pull it out and write it down while I was still crying, already turning it into 3 lines for strangers. That notebook was always fuller than the fridge, but the worst thing he ever did happened at my engagement party. I'd been with Claire for 4 years. She came from real money, the kind with a family name on buildings, and for 4 years I'd been passing, learning which fork, softening my accent. Her parents hosted the party at their country club, 200 people, and I remember thinking I was one good night away from a life on the other side of everything I came from. I made one mistake. I invited my dad after he swore to me, hand on his heart, that just this once there would be no bits, no stories about me. He showed up already drunk. Halfway through dinner, in the quiet between courses, he stood up and clinked his glass until the room turned. Nobody had asked him to speak. He said he was proud, that he never thought this day would come. And then he said he had a funny story about exactly why. He told 200 people the most private, most fragile thing I own. When I was 19, I fell apart badly. There was a night that ended with my father driving me to a hospital, 72 hours where I couldn't leave, and a long climb back to being a person. Only 3 people knew, and Claire wasn't one of them. I had a plan for how I'd tell her, gently, in private, when the time was right. My father performed it instead. He acted it out on the floor of that country club, using his own body to puppet the worst night of my life, grinning up at all of them, waiting for a laugh that never came. Not one person laughed. A man stood up and walked out. My father said into the mic, "Tough room," and reached for a dinner roll like he'd earned his lunch. Claire was staring at me, not at him, at me. I watched 4 years of me get rewritten behind her eyes in 90 seconds. She almost called off the wedding. Half her family has never really spoken to me since, because all they know about me is what my father acted out on that floor, and they decided it was genetic. He never apologized. He said I was too sensitive, that comedy comes from truth, that now I was memorable. Then he assumed he'd give a speech at the wedding, and when I said no, he laughed and said, "You can't stop the father of the groom from talking." Every boundary I set, he read as a dare. He called the venue directly about the sound equipment, then called Claire to say I was being controlling. That was when I understood the only thing my father had ever respected was a room, a laugh, and who controlled it. So I stopped trying to keep him out of a room. I decided to give him one. I told him I wanted to throw a party the week before the wedding, just his comedy friends, so his world and mine could finally meet. I said I felt bad about the engagement party, and he decided I was finally coming around. It was the easiest lie I've ever told. He gathered his sad circuit himself, 15 open mic regulars, and brought them to me like an offering. I booked a back room with a raised platform and a house mic, because I knew the mic mattered to him. I told everyone we were doing a roast, but with a twist. Instead of roasting each other, we'd roast our parents. My dad loved it, and volunteered to go first, to warm the room up for me. He went first, of course. He grabbed the mic and did 15 minutes about my childhood humiliations, then sat down glowing and winked at me, like we were in it together now. 2 comics at last. Then, it was my turn. He clapped before I even stood up, and called out, "Here we go, my kid." I walked up onto the platform I had paid for, took the microphone out of the stand, and looked at my father in the second row, arms crossed, already smiling, ready to be proud of me. I had no notes. I didn't need any. I'd been writing this set for 30 years. I just hadn't known it was a set. I started with the year my father was 17. Click here to watch part 2 of the story.